Give that to my son or get your kids out, my sister snapped, after her 13-year-old ripped the gold chain off my boy's neck. He deserves nice things more than your kid, she said. My parents just watched. I took the chain, walked out, and made one quiet change. By sunrise, my sister was calling from a parking lot. Quick second before the video. If you've been watching this channel and you're not subscribed yet, you're missing out, and so are we. Hit that button, join the community, and let's grow this thing together. All right, here we go. I heard the chain break before I saw it happen. A small sound, like a twig, and then my son's hand went to his neck and the chain was gone. My nephew was holding it up like a trophy, dangling it between two fingers while my sister watched from across the room and said nothing. When I stood up, she finally spoke. Give that to my son or get your kids out. My parents were sitting 3 feet away. Neither of them moved. My name is Nathan. My son's name is Caleb. He's 10. The chain was a birthday gift I bought him 3 months ago because he asked for one like his grandfather used to wear. The flat herringbone kind that catches light when you move. I saved for it, picked it up from a jeweler on a Tuesday afternoon, and wrapped it at the kitchen table while he was at school. It cost $400, which is not a lot to some people, but it was a lot to me, and it was everything to him. Caleb wore that chain every day. He tucked it inside his shirt at school, took it off before basketball practice, and put it back on after his shower. He treated it like it was worth more than gold, because to him it was. On it was the first thing that made him feel grown. Let me tell you about my sister Rachel before I tell you about the dinner, because the dinner doesn't make sense without the pattern. At Christmas last year, my parents bought Rachel's son Marcus a gaming console. Caleb got a $20 gift card. He said thank you and didn't complain. On the car ride home, he turned the gift card over in his hands like he was trying to find more value in it. At the last family barbecue, Rachel told Caleb to give up his seat at the table so Marcus could sit down. You're younger, you can sit on the step. Caleb was 10, Marcus was 13. Caleb moved without being told twice, and I watched my son sit on a concrete step eating a hot dog while his cousin took his chair, and I didn't say anything because I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. My wife Laura has a list in her head. Every slight, every ranking, every moment Rachel or my parents treated Caleb as less than Marcus. She doesn't bring it up often, but when she does, the list is specific and dated, and she delivers it without emotion, just facts. The way someone reads a medical chart. She has been building a case I wasn't ready to hear, and she has been patient about it in a way I didn't deserve. On the way to dinner that night, Caleb was in the back seat with his headphones on, watching something on Laura's phone. Laura kept her voice low. If your sister starts something tonight, I'm not sitting through it. She won't. It's just dinner. It's never just dinner. Last time she made Caleb give up his chair. Time before that, she told your mother Caleb is hyperactive in front of everyone because he was playing too loud. Your mother agreed. Laura, I'm not fighting with you. I'm telling you what I see. And what I see is a family that treats our son like a guest in a house that should be his home too. I didn't answer. She was right. But being right and being ready are different things. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. That was about to change. We got to my parents' house at 6. My mother had made pot roast. The table was set for 8. My father was in his usual chair at the head of the table with the TV remote next to his plate, even though the TV was off. Rachel was already there with Marcus, who was slouched in his chair scrolling through his phone with one earbud in. My mother hugged Caleb at the door. There's my boy. You're getting so tall. Caleb hugged her back. He always did. Rachel didn't get up. She waved from the table. Hey! One word for all 4 of us. Marcus didn't look up from his phone. Marcus, say hello to your uncle, Rachel said. But she said it the way people say things they know won't be followed. Marcus lifted his chin half an inch and went back to his screen. Caleb sat across from Marcus. The chain was visible above his collar because he'd been wearing a crew neck that day. I noticed Marcus looking at it when we sat down. He stared at it for a few seconds, then looked at his mother, then looked back at the chain. We ate. My father asked about work. I told him things were busy. He nodded the way he nods at things that don't interest him enough for a second question. My mother passed the rolls and told Rachel about a sale at the grocery store. Rachel complained about her landlord raising the water bill, which she does at every dinner because complaining is how she reminds everyone she has it harder than the rest of us and should therefore be forgiven for everything that follows. Laura was quiet. She was watching the table the way she watches tables at these things, tracking the small details nobody else thinks are important. Who gets served first? Who gets asked about their week? Who gets interrupted and who gets listened to? She had told me once that you can see the whole family hierarchy in the first 10 minutes of a dinner if you pay attention. I never paid attention. She always did. My mother asked Marcus about school. He gave a two-word answer. My mother laughed like he'd said something clever. Why she didn't ask Caleb about school. Laura caught my eye across the table. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The small tilt of her head toward Caleb said it. She had just watched my mother skip our son. Rachel turned to Caleb. That's a nice chain. Where'd you get that? Caleb touched it. Dad got it for my birthday. Must have been expensive. I looked at Rachel. It was a gift. I'm just saying, that's a lot of gold for a 10-year-old. She glanced at Marcus, making sure he was listening. Some kids don't get nice things like that. The sentence hung in the air. Not an insult exactly, a positioning statement. She had just told Marcus, in front of the whole table, that Caleb had something he shouldn't have, and Marcus was the one being treated unfairly. Laura's hand found my knee under the table. A squeeze. Hey, hard enough to mean, don't. I went back to my pot roast, but I could see Marcus across the table, and he was looking at the chain differently now. Not casually. He was studying it the way you study something you've been told should be yours. 2 minutes later, he did. Marcus reached across the table, grabbed the chain with one hand, and yanked. The clasp snapped with a sound like a twig breaking. Caleb gasped, and his hand flew to his neck. The chain was in Marcus's fist, and he held it up for a second, looked at it, then threw it under the table like it was a gum wrapper. The room went still. Not quiet. Still. The kind of still where you can hear the ice settling in a glass, and the clock ticking on the wall and nobody's fork is moving. Rachel looked at me. Not at Marcus, not at Caleb, who was sitting there with his hand on his neck and his eyes wide. At me, as if I was the problem she needed to address. Give that to my son or get your kids out. She said it like a line she had rehearsed. No hesitation, no shock at what Marcus had just done. Just a demand, delivered across the table at a volume the entire room could hear. He deserves nice things more than your kid. There it was. Years of small rankings, the drumstick, the chair, the gift card, all of it compressed into one sentence spoken in front of both children, in front of my parents, in front of my wife. She had ranked my son to his face at a dinner table in his grandparents' house, and she expected the room to agree. I looked at my parents. My father was cutting chicken. My mother had a glass of water halfway to her mouth, and she put it down slowly, carefully, here as if setting down a glass was the most important thing happening in the room. Neither of them said a word. Neither of them told Rachel to stop. Neither of them told Marcus to give the chain back or apologize or get up from the table. The forks. I keep coming back to the forks. My son had a red mark forming on the back of his neck where the clasp had dragged across his skin before it snapped, and my parents chose their forks over his face. I looked at Caleb. He wasn't crying. He wasn't yelling at Marcus or reaching under the table for the chain. He was looking at me. Just looking at me with his hand on his neck. Waiting. Not waiting for someone. Waiting for me. Because I'm his father, and when things go wrong, he looks at me, and the look in his eyes was not anger or pain. It was trust. He was trusting me to answer what just happened. And I stood up. My chair scraped the floor hard enough that the silverware rattled. Everyone looked at me. Rachel's face shifted from smug to something less certain. My father stopped cutting. My mother's hand froze over her glass. I didn't move for 3 seconds. 3 full seconds of standing still while the fury went through me. My hands were fists at my sides, and my jaw was locked, and I could feel my heartbeat in my neck. 3 seconds of being the closest I have ever come to losing control in front of my son. Then I bent down between the chair legs, reached under the table, and picked the chain up off the carpet. I put it in my pocket. I took Caleb's hand. I looked at my parents, not at Rachel, at them. 3 seconds of eye contact that said everything I wasn't going to say out loud. Then I walked to the door. Laura was already standing. She had her purse and Caleb's jacket in her hand. She was ready before I was. She had been ready before dinner started. Rachel called after us. "Oh, come on, you're really going to make this a big deal. It was just a chain. Marcus didn't mean anything by it." Laura opened the door. I walked through it with Caleb. Laura closed it behind us and Rachel's voice was cut off by the click of the latch. That click was the last sound I heard from my parents' house. The soft, clean sound of a door closing on a room full of people who watched my son get hurt and said nothing. The car was quiet for 5 minutes. Laura was in the passenger seat with her arms crossed, not from cold, but from the effort of keeping her mouth shut. Caleb was in the back seat with his hand still on his neck. "Dad, did I do something wrong?" My hands tightened on the wheel, and the streetlight turned green, and I drove through it before answering. "You didn't do anything wrong, Caleb. Not one thing." "Then why did Marcus do that?" Laura turned slightly toward the back seat but didn't answer. She was letting me handle it, or she was letting me hear the question properly. "Because Marcus made a bad choice. But Aunt Rachel said I don't deserve it. Aunt Rachel is wrong. She said it in front of everybody." "I know she did. Grandma and Grandpa didn't say anything." I looked at him in the rearview mirror. He was 10 years old and he had already noticed exactly what I noticed. The grandparents said nothing. He clocked it. Kids always clock it. "I know they didn't. Does that mean they agree with her?" I didn't answer that one. Laura reached back and put her hand on his knee. "And it means we're going home, and you're going to be okay." Caleb nodded. He looked out the window for a while. Then, "Am I going to get my chain back?" "It's in my pocket. It's yours. Nobody's taking it." He put his hand on his neck where the chain used to be and held it there for the rest of the drive. The red line from the clasp was visible when the streetlights hit it through the window. It ran from one side of his neck to the other, like a scratch from an animal. And every time I saw it in the mirror, I felt the fury come back, controlled but present, sitting in my chest like something with weight. At home, I put ointment on the mark while Caleb sat on the bathroom counter. Laura stood in the doorway watching with her arms folded. "It stings a little," Caleb said. "I know, buddy. It'll fade." He looked at himself in the mirror, turning his head to see the mark. "It looks like a scratch." "It is a scratch." "From the chain?" "From the clasp when it broke." He thought about that for a second. "Marcus pulled really hard." "Yeah, he did." I put him to bed at 9. He held the broken chain in his hand while he fell asleep, fingers curled around the links the way he holds things he's afraid of losing. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him breathe, the red mark visible above the collar of his pajama shirt, the chain clutched in his fist on the pillow. Downstairs, Laura was sitting at the kitchen table. She had 2 cups of coffee poured and her phone face down on the table. She looked at me when I sat down across from her. "How's the mark?" "It'll fade." "And how are you?" "I'm angry." "Good, you should be angry." "I've been angry for 2 years. She picked up her coffee and held it without drinking. "I'm going to say something and I need you to hear it." "Okay. I watched your sister tell your son he doesn't deserve nice things. I watched your parents keep eating. I watched a 13-year-old rip a chain off your son's neck and throw it on the floor like garbage. And I watched you stand there for 3 seconds deciding whether to flip the table or walk out. You walked out. That was the right call, but what happens next is what matters." "I know." "Do you?" "Because I've been watching you let this family treat Caleb like a second-class kid for 2 years. And every time I bring it up, you tell me I'm overreacting. And tonight a child put a mark on our son's neck and your parents didn't stop chewing." She was right. She had always been right. And I just wasn't ready to hear it until tonight. "Are you ready now?" she said. I nodded. I picked up my phone. I called the leasing office's after-hours line, Rachel's apartment. I co-signed her lease 2 years ago after her divorce, when nobody else would put their name on it. I left a message requesting formal withdrawal of my co-signer guarantee, effective immediately. 90 seconds. I hung up. Laura was watching me. "What else is she on?" "Car insurance. She's been on my policy." "Remove it." I opened the app. Found Rachel's name under additional drivers. 3 taps. Removed. The Amazon account. Marcus's school supplies. I changed the password and removed the shared access. 30 seconds. Laura picked up her coffee. Drank it this time. Are anything else? That's everything. Then we're done. We sat in the quiet kitchen while the phone stayed dark on the table between us. Whatever was coming in the morning was coming. Rachel texted at 9 p.m. You're being dramatic. Marcus is just a kid. He didn't know what he was doing. Laura read it over my shoulder. She's already rewriting it. Marcus reached across a table and ripped a chain off a child's neck. That's not a kid who doesn't know what he's doing. I didn't reply. At 10:15, another text. Mom is really upset. I hope you're proud of yourself. Laura looked at the screen. Your mother was upset enough to keep eating during the whole thing. At 11 p.m., one more. Look, I'm sorry if things got heated. Can we talk about this tomorrow? The apology had an if in it. If things got heated. As if what happened was weather that just occurred around everyone, instead of something her son did with his hands while she watched. I screenshotted all 3 texts. I didn't reply to any of them. We went to bed. I lay in the dark for a while, thinking about the 3 seconds I stood at that table, the 3 seconds where I chose to bend down instead of reach across. I made the right call because my son was watching. I slept better than I expected. Decisions that are right tend to let you rest. At 6:14 a.m., my phone rang. Rachel. I let it ring. She called again at 6:16 and 6:18 and 6:21. 4 calls in 7 minutes. I picked up on the 5th call. She was crying. Not angry crying. Scared crying. The kind that comes when you wake up and find a piece of paper under your door that rearranges your life. Nathan, what did you do? The landlord left a notice. He said the co-signer withdrew. What does that even mean? It means my name is no longer on your lease. You can't just do that. I can. I did it last night. Last night? You did this last night? While I was sleeping? While your son was sleeping with a mark on my son's neck. Yeah. Last night. She went quiet for a few seconds. I could hear traffic in the background. She was outside. Nathan, I have 30 days. 30 days to find somewhere to go. Do you understand what that means? I understand exactly what it means. I also understood what it meant when your son ripped a chain off a 10-year-old's neck and you told me to get out. This is about a chain. You're going to make my kid homeless over a chain? You made my kid bleed over a chain. I'm just removing my name from a piece of paper. More quiet. Ash, then I can't start my car. The insurance app says my policy is inactive. That's correct. Nathan, find your own insurance, Rachel. Find your own lease. Find your own way. Because the person who was doing all of that for you is the same person you told to get out of your parents' house while his 10-year-old was bleeding, and that person is done. You're ruining my life. I'm leaving your life. There's a difference. You should have learned it before last night. I hung up. At 7 a.m., my mother called. Nathan, Rachel called me. She's standing outside her building. She says you pulled your name off her lease. I did. Why would you do that? Because she told my son he doesn't deserve nice things. And while her son was leaving a mark on my boy's neck, you picked up your fork and kept eating. My mother was quiet. Nathan, she's your sister. She's struggling. She's been struggling since the divorce, and I've been the one holding her up. The lease is my name. The car insurance was my policy, and last night she looked at the person paying for all of it and told him to get out. She didn't mean it. She meant it. She always means it. You just always pretend she doesn't because it's easier than holding her accountable. My father got on the phone. His voice was tight, the way it gets when he's been told to call. This has gone too far. You need to come over and fix this. Fix what? The dinner where a 13-year-old attacked a 10-year-old and you didn't stop chewing? I don't need to fix anything. I already fixed the one thing I had control over. You're overreacting. I'm reacting for the first time. Hetworm, that's why it looks like overreacting to you. He hung up. Laura raised her cup slightly like a toast. That morning, Caleb came downstairs in a t-shirt, no chain. He sat at the table and poured himself cereal without being asked, which he never does. He was being careful. Kids get careful after something happens that they don't fully understand, but know was bad. I set the broken chain on the table next to his bowl. He looked at it. He picked it up and held it in his hand while he ate, the broken clasp dangling between his fingers. Can it be fixed? Yeah, I'm taking it to the jeweler today. The same one where you bought it? Same one. He held the chain up to the light. The herringbone links caught the morning sun from the kitchen window. It still looks pretty. It is pretty. Marcus didn't even want it. He threw it on the floor. I know. He didn't want the chain. He just didn't want me to have it. I looked at my 10-year-old sitting at the kitchen table in the morning light, holding a broken chain he figured out more about than most adults would. He understood what Marcus did better than Rachel would ever understand it. The grabbing wasn't about gold. It was about taking something from someone because you can. Laura took a photo of the red mark on the back of Caleb's neck before he left for school. She didn't tell him what it was for. She just took it and put her phone in her pocket. The rest of the week was quiet. Rachel didn't call again after the parking lot. My parents didn't call again after my father hung up. The silence had edges. A few days later, my mother came to the house. She brought a casserole and a bag of groceries she didn't need to bring. She stood in the hallway with the bag in her hands, and Caleb walked past on his way to the living room. He said hi and kept walking. He didn't stop. He didn't hug her. He used to run to the door when she came over. Now he treated her like the mailman, polite but uninterested. She noticed. I could see it on her face. She sat at the kitchen table while Caleb played in the other room. I could hear him talking to himself, making car noises, normal kid sounds. I should have said something at dinner. You should have. I didn't know what to say. You didn't have to know what to say. You had to say something, anything. That's enough, Rachel. 4 words. You couldn't find 4 words while your grandson was holding his neck. She looked at her hands on the table. Rachel's always been like that. And you've always let her. You let her take the seat at the barbecue. You let her give Caleb a $20 gift card next to a gaming console. You let her tell a 10-year-old to sit on a step so Marcus could have the chair. And then you let her son rip a chain off my boy's neck, and you let her tell me to get out. At what point does "that's how Rachel is" stop being an excuse and start being your choice? She didn't answer right away. She folded her hands and unfolded them. Your father thinks you went too far. My father watched his grandson get hurt and didn't put his fork down. He doesn't get to measure distance. He wants to talk to you. He can call. He's too proud. Then he can stay proud. I'm not driving to his house to make it easier for him to tell me I overreacted. She started to tear up. I don't want to lose you, Nathan. You didn't lose me at dinner, Mom. You lost my trust. Those are different things, and only one of them comes back. She sat there for a few more minutes. She asked if she could say goodbye to Caleb. I said she could. She went to the living room doorway and said, "Bye, sweetheart." Caleb said, "Bye, Grandma," without looking up from his cars. She stood there for a second, watching him not look up. And I think that was the first time she understood what the silence at the dinner table actually cost. She left the casserole on the counter and drove home. My father called that evening. Short call, different tone than before, less commanding. Your sister is staying with us. She's sleeping on the couch. Okay. Marcus is in the spare room. No, he's asking why they had to leave the apartment. What did Rachel tell him? She told him you're being difficult. She told him the truth she's comfortable with. That's what she does. How long are you going to keep this up? I'm not keeping anything up, Dad. I removed my name from a lease. That's not a punishment. That's a signature on a piece of paper that I had every right to take back. She's your sister, and he's my son. Long pause. Is the boy okay? It was the first time either of my parents had asked about Caleb since the dinner. 5 days later, the first question about the child who was actually hurt. He's fine. He's wearing his chain again. I got the class fixed. Good. It shouldn't have needed fixing, Dad. He didn't say anything else. He said goodnight and hung up. It wasn't an apology. But it was the first conversation that didn't start with telling me to fix things, and that was close enough to progress for 1 week. Caleb asked me that night if we were going to Grandma's house again. Not for a while, buddy. How long is a while? I don't know yet. He thought about it. Can we get pizza instead? Yeah, we can get pizza. Can I get pepperoni and pineapple? You can get whatever you want. He grinned and went back to his cars. He had already adjusted the way 10-year-olds adjust when they've figured out where the warmth actually is. That weekend, I took the chain to the jeweler. Same shop where I bought it 3 months ago. I set it on the counter. The jeweler picked it up and turned it under the light. What happened? It got pulled off. He examined the clasp. Chain's fine. She just the clasp. He fixed it in 20 minutes. $15 repair on a $400 chain. On the way out, he said, must have been pulled pretty hard. Those clasps don't break easy. I nodded and walked out with the chain in my pocket. That evening, I put the chain on the kitchen counter. Caleb found it when he came in from playing outside. He stopped in the doorway. You fixed it? Yeah. Does it look the same? Exactly the same. He picked it up and put it on, tucking it inside his shirt the way he always does, running his fingers along the flat herringbone links to make sure they were lying flat. He looked at me. Thanks, Dad. He went back outside to play. The chain was under his shirt where it belonged, and the screen door banged shut behind him, and for a second the kitchen was quiet in the good way. Monday morning. I made Caleb breakfast while he got dressed for school. He came downstairs in his uniform with the chain tucked inside his shirt. I could see the outline of it under the fabric. He'd been wearing it since I fixed it, and he hadn't taken it off except for basketball and showers, same as before. Laura was packing his lunch at the counter. She looked at the chain, then at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Caleb sat down and ate his toast. He was talking about a math test he had later and whether Marcus's school did the same kind of tests. Then he stopped. He looked at me. Dad? Yeah? I'm not going to see Marcus for a while, am I? Probably not for a while. Because of the chain? Because of a lot of things. He thought about it while he chewed. That's okay. Marcus isn't that fun anyway. Laura turned around so Caleb wouldn't see her face. She was laughing, or she was trying not to cry. From where I was standing, it looked like both. I drove Caleb to school. He got out of the car with his backpack and his chain tucked inside his shirt where it belonged. The red mark on the back of his neck had faded to a thin line that you'd only see if you knew to look for it. The clasp was new. The chain was the same. The boy was the same, but a little different in the way that kids are different after they learn something about the world they didn't know before. He waved at me from the sidewalk. Bye, Dad. Then he turned and ran inside, his backpack bouncing, the chain invisible under his shirt but there. The chain was fixed. The mark was healing. The boy was running. I watched him until he disappeared through the doors. Then I put the car in drive.